It didn't matter that my heart was racing, or that the security guard was on the lookout for me. I wasn't going to get a chance like this ever again. His large frame walked with a steady stride. Not once did he call out to me. No warning to get out. I waited with my gloved hand on the decaying wall, just outside a broken window that allowed my hasty escape. Waiting, while the security guard's flashlight moved with each footstep on the broken concrete, all while he did his round of the building I was in, hoping he wouldn't find me. The light moved from side to side while he inspected the hallway, filled with mostly locked doors, and would stop to shine the light inside the room. The same one I climbed out of moments before, finding nothing but rotting wooden furniture with the metal springs of a bed frame and nothing else. He'd leave in search of me. I covered my mouth with my hand, trying to soften the sound of my breathing with how deathly silent the room was. There was something moving through the waist-high grass nearby, rustling the leaves and closing my eyes while my imagination ran wild, trying to ignore it, while my mind raced with images of a giant snake readying itself to strike, with large, venom-filled fangs. Climbing back inside, sneaking to the far corner of the room, concealed by a black shadow, and waited for the security guard to pass again. His light shone inside the room, briefly, before he continued his search for me, while each footstep of his echoed down the long hallway, until finally they were too far away. Once it was a considerable distance away, I felt like I could breathe. Taking my own flashlight, putting it on the lowest setting, and aiming it at the door to limit the visibility of the yellow glare. Without the guard's intense pale light, the old hospital was pitch black, and visibility was limited. The St. Rita Hospital, or St. Rita's, was the holy grail for urban explorers. Most people didn't even manage to get through the gates, let alone trek through the old hospital grounds and inside one of the many buildings. Walking back through the hallway, my light shining on the old black and white photographs, some with black mold staining the edges of the broken glass. Faces of long dead people stared out at me. It was revolutionary for the time. Instead of treating people as prisoners, they were treated with respect, and some could even be rehabilitated back into the community. They had access to the gardens, classes, and dignity. The man who pioneered it was Dr. Hastings. The hospital had its own farm, school, and extended community, before being closed down in 1900 for mysterious reasons. Staff were reassigned. Many kept silent to keep their new jobs. The remaining patients were transferred to other establishments, and the entire site fell to disrepair from the lack of use. No ghost stories or rumors of abuse. All of it was too wholesome. Rumor had it there were human remains still here. A large photograph of both the staff and the last residents from the year 1900. Shining a light on it, expecting there to be a strange shadow figure in the background, behind the people, and finding none. As far as asylums went, the people looked okay, and there were no telltale signs of lobotomies or other questionable medical procedures. I remembered reading about a rumor in the 70s, and later in the 90s, that a company wanted to turn it into housing development. Now in 2010, it was still empty, with only the security guards pacing the halls. Websites and forums had photos from the outside, or from the closest buildings, but nothing from the northern side. It was a complete mystery. The long corridors had no graffiti, no busted walls from copper thieves, and All the equipment was still inside. A time capsule. I snapped a couple of pictures with my instant camera, shaking the photos while they developed. My good old Polaroid. I preferred the old school look of them compared to a digital camera. And checking my phone. Surprisingly, there was still signal, with 2 bars staring back at me from my BlackBerry. I'd have to be selective about the buildings I wanted to visit. The women's ward, the place I was currently in, was interesting. But I wanted to find the hospital, and possibly the morgue. Areas deep inside the heart of the establishment. I hadn't seen any of those photos from those areas, other than the old ones when the hospital was closed. The Holy Grail. Getting photos during the current day would give me internet points. Plus, I wanted to publish them in a book. Opening up the paper map, shining the light on it, while the old bones of the building groaned around me. And I paused, waited, and pointed my flashlight in the direction of the sound. With only an eerie silence to greet me. With a sigh, I turned my attention back to the map and trailed my finger from where I was to across a pathway to where the prize sat waiting. I just had to keep giving the security guard the slip. Since it was so dark, any source of light stood out. The building grumbled before settling, leaving me with an uneasy feeling in my stomach, and after a gulp, I gathered my courage, walking down the corridor, treading lightly, to minimize the sound I made while I moved, and when I was near the end, I saw another light. Immediately moving my thumb to the button to switch it off, and fumbled, nearly dropping it. I whispered under my breath, moving to the side, and unfortunately, there were no rooms to duck inside of. After I managed to flick the light off, a long exhale came from my lips. The intense white light shone inside, moving from different angles, and suddenly the light moved away from the window on the door, leaving me alone. I was left wondering whether it was the same security guard, or a different one. The previous one had walked in the opposite direction, and it would have taken a long time to come around this other side. After peeking outside, waiting for the bobbing light to disappear into a small bead in the distance, and open the door, one thing that struck me was most of the doors were left unlocked. Rarely flicking my flashlight on and off, I ran across the courtyard, and other than a slow decay, there was no abandoned garbage, no burnt-out cars, pieces of scrap metal, or other items typically found in derelict places. The nearby hill had various crosses and headstones of people who never left St. Ritas. They died somewhere on the grounds, some no longer even acknowledged by their family members. I kept feeling like they were watching me through the metal bars, separating us, pleading faces with reaching hands. Breathing a sigh of relief when I opened the heavy wooden door to the hospital wing and made my way inside. My footsteps echoed on the surface of the floor, shining a light inside, and the black and white tiled floors greeted me. What struck me as unusual was, they looked clean, as though it had been freshly mopped. Walking up to the nurse's station, running my finger on the surface of the service desk, and finding not a single speck of dust. Holding my flashlight in my teeth, I started snapping Polaroid pictures from the center of the room down the long hallways, making sure to catch them before they fell to the ground. Taking them by the corner, shaking them, and after a quick glance down the empty hallway, I placed them on the desk. Next, I took out my digital camera and started doing the same. Full battery, no worries. It was silent. The flash would flicker in the black room, causing me to blink while my eyes readjusted. Perhaps they still use this wing for something. while leaving the other areas to rot. There was a newspaper on the nurse's station with items I imagined from the 1900s. A collection of old medicine bottles, clipboards, and a typewriter. Picking up the newspaper while shining the light on it. It was from 1900, with a headline reading, St. Ritas to close, with a picture of the hospital. I'm guessing, not long before it closed its doors for good. What surprised me was the ink was perfectly black, with no signs of fading, and the pieces of paper were white, as though they'd been perfectly preserved. It didn't make sense. It wasn't stored properly in a lab, and had been left out. The hair on the back of my neck stood up, looking in the direction I had come, and half expecting someone standing there, only to find, once more, nothing. Neatly ordered were a stack of the patient's files. Taking out my digital camera, I started taking photos of them, and opening them up to take a photo of the patients when they were admitted. Many had wide, frightened eyes of what they were experiencing. And before I could read the reason why they were admitted, a white light of the security guard's flashlight grew bright from the hallway, where I had just come through moments before. It was steadily moving closer, and I struggled when I managed to turn the flashlight off. Hiding between the chair and the desk, crouching on all fours, and waited while the loud, drawling footsteps became closer. They stopped right at the desk, and since nothing had been disturbed, I figured they were simply doing their rounds. I didn't see any lights typical of security or motion cameras. I could hear him shifting above me, the light moving around the room, and I could hear my heart pounding in my chest. He turned on his heel, walking back, and picked up one of the stray Polaroids I had left behind. Tightening my closed eyes, realizing my mistake, I could hear heavy yet muffled breathing all of a sudden, and expected him to radio in they had found an intruder on the property. His breathing became heavier, much more panicked, and looking down at the ground, hoping to make myself invisible. Hiding in the corner, hoping it'll be enough to keep me safe. His heavy boots stepped in front, lingered there for a moment, and he lowered himself down, shining a near blinding light under the desk, the beam just missing me. I tried to get a look at his face, his identity concealed with a gas mask, and concern filled me. Why did he need to have one? Were there chemicals leaking into the air? He stood up, then strode toward the double doors of the hospital ward and entered, the doors swinging open and striking the walls on either side. Each strike caused me to jump as it faded while he got further away. I felt like breathing resumed only after he left, crawling out from under, picking up most of the Polaroids, and deciding this close encounter was too much, figuring going back the way he had come could be risky. What if that was part of his routine work? There was the advantage of him thinking he had already checked the way he had come. With no time to double-check the map, I kept thinking he'd suddenly appear again, and then I'd have to make a run for it. The dilemma passed, and deciding now was time to make a run for it. Walking down the long hallway toward the exit before I started jogging, keeping the light from the flashlight lowered on the lightest setting. Already I had more evidence than anyone ever did, if they happened to believe me when I presented it. There was movement of another blinding white flashlight from the end of the hallway, turning mine off, trapped between the two of them, and wondered if I could talk my way out of it? Maybe they'd just tell me to leave, and I'd avoid a trespassing charge, heading back toward the dark with the prospect of safety, hopeful that come morning there'll be a change of shift and it'll give me the time I needed. Once I was back by the help desk, I pondered my next course of action. From what I remembered from the map, it was the ward for the criminally insane. It looked closer to a prison rather than a hospital, and I pushed the door only to realize it was locked. The first door I couldn't freely move through. I could hear a long, whining sound coming from the doorway. The double door still closed, with the window into the ward showing nothing. Was I being watched? I saw a shadow of what looked like a head that moved. Was this place still in use? Suddenly, my upper arm was grabbed by a security guard with his gloved hand. I struggled, pulling, and the fact he didn't say anything made it scarier. Shining his flashlight at the door window steadily for a moment, and I was worried that he saw it too. He started dragging me out toward the help desk, then back down the hallway toward the courtyard. "Hey, stop! Stop! I'll come with you! Fuck! You're hurting me!" I pleaded with him, when suddenly he stopped and froze in place. Staring down the hallway, his left hand shone that blinding light down there, moving before it locked onto the corner. He didn't move it. "Wait, what do you see?" He didn't answer me. I dreaded to know the answer I craved to know. I stared in the same direction, curious and seeing nothing, going back to pulling my arm away, only to find his grip far too strong. He didn't budge. Finally, he must have been satisfied and started moving down the hallway, going between shining the light in front of us and behind us. Walking with him, I didn't notice a radio, a badge or company name, or anything different. The gas mask concealed his face, and the distinct jingle of keys behind us made his pace increase to a point where I struggled to keep up with him. What was that? What do you keep running from? Again, no response. We made it to the entrance out of the courtyard, and as we approached, both doors were closed, and turning to the side using his shoulder to open it, only to find it locked. His body jerked, panicking, and smacked the surface of the door repeatedly to get the other security guard's attention. He never loosened his grip on my arm. A low, snarling gasp approached from behind us. Immediately, he aimed the white beam in the direction of the sound, and placed his body between me and whatever was making it. The light moved from side to side, and I added my dimmer light to see what would happen. His breathing through the gas mask was heavy. Smaller lights bounced from outside in the courtyard, letting us know more were nearby, and he exhaled, turned around, and suddenly a loud, terrified screech echoed through the mask. His head twisted to the right side. The light showed it, black-eyed with no definition, taunt with sallow skin and a mouth too wide. Long, stick-thin fingers pried the mask off the man, and his grip bruised me, fingertips prying into my skin in pain. But that wasn't the worst of it. He was deathly pale, with white eyes that burned now free, and his lips were sewed shut with black thread. I managed to pull backward. It tore a layer of skin off, and the hot, wet feeling let me know I was bleeding. Staring at whatever it was much smaller than him, dragging him off into the darkness, and he dropped his flashlight on the floor. A loud growl and the tearing of flesh, along with the thud of a body striking the floor, made me think whatever the hell the security guard was, he was dead. Diving down to scoop up the flashlight, aiming the light at the strange creature, and realizing it was within arm's reach, it smiled wide, beyond what humans could naturally do, with fresh blood dribbling down its chin, and it shied away from the light shining on it. "Get back! It hissed at me, moving backward with its back arched, but kept those hands up and ready to grasp at me. "Get back!" I screamed again, no longer caring to remain silent, and its teeth drew back, slinking back into the shadows and disappeared, staring down at the corpse of the security guard, whatever the hell he was, and felt pity coupled with a growing fear. A large gaping wound at his neck, vacant eyes with trails of blood leaking down his cheeks. What the hell was he? Blinking, unable to see, an arm in front of my face when two of the lights shone inside and the doors opened. A pair of security guards stood. One grabbed my arm and shone the light down the hallway, while the other checked the corpse for a pulse. A gloved hand scooped up the blood. They looked at each other, communicating somehow, and a chorus of screeches came from inside the ward, right where we had been. "Please, we need to get out of here," I murmured. They stepped back, pulling me outside onto the lawn, and flicked the automatic lock, sealing the door. The crickets and sound of animals at night filled my ears once we were outside. The chill of the night air on my cheeks, still being held by one, while the other painted the doorway with the blood of the deceased one, smearing it down along the seam. I could barely comprehend what was happening, feeling faint and blinking through the delirium, when I saw many of the ghostly faces pressed against the windows. Their black voids for eyes gazed out with their mouths wide open in wicked smiles. Some smacked on the glass while another, the one with the freshest blood on their lips, made eye contact with me and knocked heavily on the glass before curling a finger to beckon me to approach. 3 lights shone on it. Their faces stared at us, and again, a loud strike against the door. The dead security guard's face came into view, eyes locked on ours, only to have his 2 thumbs driven inside his own eye sockets, before ripping out his eyes and leaving nothing but deep, broken pits where they once were. Despite his self-mutilation, he wasn't done yet. Using his fingers, instead of pulling out the individual stitches that held his lips together, he pulled on the skin itself until he tore his lips away, his teeth forever exposed in a permanent snarling expression. I wondered if those with him had once been patients, doctors, perhaps even previous urban explorers. The flashlights no longer had the same impact. The shields weakened and each flickered, struggling to maintain a steady flow. Without words spoken out loud, I knew the guards were growing fearful, their movements snappy and reactive rather than calm and collected. Whatever these spirits were, they were growing bolder, their hands reaching through the door, causing the 3 of us to recoil. The heavy, muffled breathing behind the gas mask grew into raspy breaths. I wasn't sure if it was due to exertion, or if they were suffering. Speechless, we didn't interact with each other. "Should I have a gas mask?" I whimpered. Through the lenses, I saw those pale eyes staring at me, before the gloved hand grasped me, pulled me close so our bodies were touching, and I thought he was going to kill me, to dispose of the problem. I don't know what changed his mind, while the night air grew silent, before the chorus of screams filled the grounds. From behind us near the gates, on the massed lawns, and muffled through the various buildings, the asylum had come alive. Our heads jerked around, trying to focus on the closest sound, and it felt like it was everywhere. The realization I had awoken something, or contributed to it, terrified me. Without words, he gave my arm a double tug, and the 3 of us ran through the field. The flashlights bobbed while we sprinted, following them into a tower, while the howls and whispers followed us. They were right behind me. My chest felt tight and my muscles burned. A door was opened, and one guard entered while the other turned to gesture for me to hurry. A sudden, blinding light shone. Without stopping, I kept going, without knowing where or what I was running into. I slammed face first into the wall, hearing a crack, and pain shot through my face as I fell onto the hard floor with a thud. A hand covered my nose, and I could feel the moisture, tasting blood on my lips. My eyes strained, struggling to adjust to the new light, and hearing the heavy iron door slam and bolt behind me. A trio of figures stood around me as shadows, when I caught sight of a stone-faced woman seated at a desk. She wore an older-style nurse's habit, with a nurse's cap and an apron. It was stark white, slicked back graying hair with creases on her brow line, and a lack of smile lines told me she never smiled. She never lifted her gaze from what she was writing. Paperwork piled on her desk, and none of the guards spoke to me. Across was a single, empty chair. The furniture looked like the turn of the century. Clean, but incredibly well worn. Sit. The command was simple. Shakily I stood, my knees barely cooperating, and leaning on the desk for support. Sitting down, I coughed, sending a spray of blood over her desk. She only responded with a disapproving raise of an eyebrow and kept writing. Trembling, I attempted to wipe it off with the underside of my arm, only instead to smear it on the surface. I felt my nose. It was off-center, and I tried to get the nerve to put it back in place, only to find that I couldn't. My mouth pulled with blood, parting my lips with the metallic taste lingering, and the blood trickling down. She clicked her fingers. One of the security guards came behind me. A gloved hand covered my face, and my hands went up to defend myself, only for him to snap it back into place. You are not where you belong. I know. Your being here has made matters far worse for us. Then opened an ink pad, smacked a rectangular stamp on it, before doing the rest of the documents. Why did she look more human? Why weren't her lips stitched up? And what exactly had I done to make it worse? Before I could ask these questions out loud, she unlocked her top drawer, opening it, and took out a shiny revolver. Placing it in front of her, a hand rested on top to prevent me from grabbing it. I noticed the shadow of two of the security guards on either side of me, their hands on my shoulders, keeping me in place in case I tried to run. Why keep me alive if they were just going to kill me anyway? My hands were placed on the table, fingers spread apart, and my fingernails curled to press into the surface of the wood. My head swam from getting hit on the wall. How did you get here? Her voice was low, a dangerous glint to her voice. I figured honesty was the best policy. I got through the fence. I brought my camera and wanted to document the asylum, I answered, studying her face for any indication of what she was thinking. Receiving none, I continued. No one else has been able to get in. I wasn't going to damage the place. I just wanted to take some pictures. She stood. Heels clicked on the floor for 3 paces and leaned on the corner of the desk. The nurse's attire faded away, replaced with a soldier's uniform, still in an older style, a tan blazer with a brown pencil-lined skirt. There were badges and stripes on her blazer. I didn't recognize them. What did you touch? I couldn't think of anything specific. I didn't steal anything. I, I don't know, My mind raced with answers. The newspaper? I just looked, please. I don't want any trouble. Her face etched with alarm, and her hand grasped the revolver, holding it in her hand and aiming it at my temple. Perspiration trickled down my forehead. Tears trickled down and my heart raced. The hammer was cocked. Who sent you? No one. I came alone. I came by myself. There have been others who were sent by Dr. Hastings, 1 or 2 at a time, and we always stop them. Dr. Hastings? The son of... She looked skeptical. Her hand reached out and grasped my chin, her head low, so our noses barely touched. The only Dr. Hastings. How? He would have to be over 100 years old, possibly more. I don't know him. Breathing heavily, I composed myself. I read about him in a book or online, somewhere. There was doubt in her eyes. Open the door. The cold, grim tone frightened me, and I was lifted by the shoulder. Please. Please. I can't tell you what I don't know. The third guard opened the locked door. The blinding light blared in from the outside, and I remember the shadows hunting through the grounds. I imagined them lingering, waiting, and with my eyes tightly squinted, I felt my knees kicked out from beneath me, landing hard on the surface of the grass, with my head lowered, and I waited for the end. The sharp fire of the revolver, loud and powerful in my ear, it rang, causing my head to spin. With my eyes tightly closed, trembling, and realizing my body was still upright, and I was breathing, feeling air where it didn't belong on the back of my skull. Reaching behind, my hand touched my hair and felt a hole, surrounded by warmth. She shot me? I felt pieces of skin and hair, a wetness, and looked at the blood on my fingers. I had to be dead. Looking over my shoulder, studying her, glaring in return, while she had a lopsided smirk on her face. I had to be sure you weren't one of them. Her voice distorted. The evasiveness, attempted murder, all the mysteries, it was all too much to bear. Blinking, my eyes now forced to adjust to a dim light that replaced the bright one. Who? What of who? Who are you? I screeched, uncaring. She exhaled, condensation rising from her lips. An experiment. That definitely didn't answer my question. You are? What? The fierce light loudly turned off, leaving a lighter one in its wake. Lights lit up along the fence line in all directions. Grim stars showing how large the structure was, with countless ones cascading on either side. Instead of the oppressive pitch black, there was a thick grayness clinging to the atmosphere, semi-concealing faces and outlines of people's bodies. Shakily placing one foot in front and pushing myself up to my feet with a groan. Standing up on shaky feet, swaying on the spot, and watch while they all faded to nothingness. A final wisp before I was alone. I was sure it was dusk with the fading sun that lingered, right before it would finally descend. Walking back toward the tower, to find the door rusted at the frame, and the door, once so impenetrable, now laying off its hinges, and stepping into the room to find the floor semi-covered in stagnant, foul-smelling water. The walls that moments ago had been so fine, now were coated in black mold. The desk was still there. The surface had damp pieces of folders with yellow paper sticking out of it, with a skeleton leaning back, dressed in a female officer uniform. There were 2 other skeletons laying on the ground, leaning on the walls, with their gas masks rotten and ajar off their faces. All their uniforms were moth-eaten. They'd been here for some time. One of the guards still had skin and traces of flesh. One thing could be confirmed, and leaning down, I placed a hand on the gas mask and pulled it away. His lips were parted, with no sign of the black stitches. Maybe some chemical had gotten released that caused hallucinations, or perhaps a lack of sleep. From what I knew, St. Ritas was abandoned in 1900. So, why were there soldiers here? And why had they been left to rot rather than be buried? It didn't make sense. It was closed before either of the 2 world wars. Deciding to leave before whatever possible contagion could infect me. Walking outside, now lit up, and deciding now was the best time to leave St. Rita's. The fence had no gaps I could sneak through. No longer a chain link one. There were bars, with bishop points at the top. The smog made visibility difficult. Running my hand along the fence while I walked toward the gatehouse and the main entrance gate, figuring I'd find a smaller side entrance along the way. Looking toward the buildings, the shadowy structure I had been, and then outside the boundary fence. I couldn't see more than a meter beyond. It would have been peaceful if I didn't have prior experience. I couldn't see any of the security guards or soldiers, whichever they were. The solitude felt brief yet eternal. Walking through the long grass, leaving a trail of flattened grass behind me. I couldn't tell how long I'd been walking for. The perimeter kept drawing on and on. With only the smallest distance, I saw the closed gate. The gravel led toward the entrance of the office building. The stairs leading up looked polished, and the large twin doors were closed, quiet, and with no one else on the grounds. I couldn't tell if there were people inside. I didn't want to know. Temptation to venture inside was prevented, and my attention diverted back to the gate. The gate had a chain with a large padlock. It all looked so dated. Strangely, it wasn't locked, and twisted it, pulling the chain, and then pressed on the gate. It was stuck, wincing while pushing. I couldn't help glancing back over my shoulder, and the oppressive feeling of being watched hung heavy. Nothing changed. Pulling on the gate again, it clanked loudly and echoed throughout the desolate open area. The hair on the back of my neck rose, and after what felt like countless hours of walking, the descending darkness grew quickly and exposed in the open. Now with the dread decision of remaining where I was or make my way inside. Faint lights appeared in the distance, the same bright white light that moved until I was briefly blinded by one near me. It rocked from the ground, and I saw the skeleton that had been concealed by the long grass. A bony hand rose, only for embalmed flesh to wrap around it, before a glove hid it from view. A long, deep breath from inside the gas mask came, and I knew there'd be more. While some of the security guards helped me in the past, I didn't want to take my chances, considering there was still a hole in the back of my head. Reaching out and snatching his flashlight from him, sprinting away when a muffled scream echoed around me. I knew the strange ghosts or whatever they were must have killed him. With no time to ponder questions, I ran back toward where the female officer, or nurse, whatever she had been. No matter how fast I ran, They were always right on my heels, and I unable to escape. It lingered in the background. The lights are dimmed, and I screeched when I felt a hand grasp me. A kindly man, human-looking, with a cropped grey beard and a kindly smile. He held me by the shoulder, and I'd seen enough horror movies to know this wasn't going well. He seemed immune, both to the security guard soldiers and the ghostly shadow creatures. It didn't take long before I was led inside. He took me into his office, silent. The room was half old, decrepit, and coated in a line of mold, while the other was new, polished and shining. The door closed behind us, and he, my rescuer, disappeared. Outside the room, I heard the heavy breathing through the gas mask, and their heavy footsteps moving through the halls. A box of old cameras, clothing from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. Multiple pairs of glasses. It was all neat, sorted methodically. I noticed my own cameras among the rest, with a stack of Polaroid photos. Picking them up and flicking through them, drawing them closer to my face, when I noticed I had a constant companion with me. The same old man. Instead of comfort, I was terrified with a primal fear. It was Dr. Hastings himself, but instead, a twisted, broken version of the once respected man. His lips stitched up and pulled in all directions, with his face lifted around the eyes to expose his eyeballs permanently, with blood trickling down from his nostrils, and he leered toward me. "What happened here? What happened to you?" I whispered. It faded out, slipping back to the real world, when I saw lights bounce and movement. Humans, faster and more nimble than the spirits or the security guards. Hope filled me, running toward the sound when I heard teenagers in clothing that no longer made sense. "Help me! Help me!" They screamed when they saw me, before they turned on their heels and ran, and I kept chasing. I needed them. I needed their energy, or I'll fade. I hope you enjoy this story. What did you think of it? Let me know what you thought in the comments section down below. Don't forget to stab the like button, subscribe, hit the bell and leave a comment. This video is made with the support of my incredible channel members, Patreon subscribers, and all my viewers. Thank you so much for supporting me. Don't forget to check out my social media accounts below, including my merch. Stay safe, my little spooklings. And remember, I'll be watching you.